Okay, I think we should be live now. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world right now. Welcome to our third and final webinar in our series preparing applicants for the 2022-2024 Euroculture Master of Arts intake. Once again, a warm welcome to all of you who are joining live, or maybe also welcome to those who might be watching the VOD after this stream has finished. My name is Jelmer Herms. I am the course and consortium manager for Euroculture. I work both for Euroculture Groningen as part of the Euroculture consortium, as well as for the broader secretariat of the entire consortium. And I'm going to be spending some time today with you doing two things, basically. The first of which is to give you a presentation of what Euroculture is about, give you a little bit more information about the program, how it works, where you can go, also how to apply. And in the second part of the session, we'll answer some of the questions you might have. You can leave any questions you have in the chat that we have available on our YouTube stream right now. If you think that it cannot wait until the end, feel free to submit it at any time. I will check occasionally to see if it maybe involves the presentation slide we're on right now, or if it's something a little bit more general. Either way, feel free to interrupt me. The presentation part of the stream will take approximately, 1 hour more or less, maybe a little bit less depending on how we do. And then I would like to save the rest of the session for Q&A. Today, I'm not joined by anyone else. Maybe if you've heard of our last webinars, we were joined by our student ambassador, Margriet Visser. She unfortunately couldn't make it due to COVID. She caught COVID and she's actually doing a test right now. So unfortunately, she couldn't make it to the session today. And maybe if you go back even further and you remember our first session, if you were there as well, you might know that we had two of our Erasmus Mundus graduates, current students on. So yes, today, unfortunately, not joined by anyone else, but I hope I'll be able to answer all your questions and maybe give you some insight into the program. I should note I'm also a graduate of the program from 2020 myself, so I do know a few things about being a Euroculture student as well. So with all that stated, maybe let's get started with the presentation. Right. So what exactly have you joined today? What are we talking about today? I see we can't see the whole slide here. Let's make this a little bit smaller just to get the entire slide in the picture. That's better. Right. So what is Euroculture exactly? Euroculture is a 2-year, 120 ECTS master's program that is fully taught in English. Our program is run by a network of 8 different universities throughout Europe, and it also delivers you a joint master's degree from 2 of those. So part of Euroculture is a mandatory mobility element where you go from your first university to your second one, and you will receive a diploma from both of those at the end of the 2-year program. We'll go over which universities are part of our consortium in a minute, but for now, I'd just like to give you some of the basics first. So what do we discuss in Euroculture? Because Euroculture as a term, of course, can be seen as a little bit vague or doesn't encapsulate fully what the program is about if you look at it a little bit more closely. So that's why the subtitle of the program, Politics, Society, and Culture in a Global Context, is something you will often find referred to as well, because that's really the 3 main dimensions of the program that we focus on. It's generally focused on European integration, specifically the interplay of politics and culture in European society. And that's also very broad. and that's also part of the way the program works. I will explain what this means in further detail, and I hope it will become clearer throughout the presentation, because there's a lot of different ways that you can tailor Euroculture to your needs and also your academic and professional interests. And that's what I want to get into a little bit more later in the presentation as well. Euroculture is an Erasmus Mundus Master of Arts program, which means that we are funded by the European Commission and that we are able to provide Erasmus Mundus scholarships for our program, which might be the reason that you're currently interested in this talk, because you're maybe interested in applying for the Erasmus Mundus scholarship. If that's the case, feel free to ask any questions about the Erasmus Mundus scholarship and maybe how to get it and what you need to know in the Q&A section of the presentation later. Generally, Euroculture is considered to be a top-rated MA program, which means that we score well in multiple different domains and study guides at many different national levels. Since I'm from Euroculture Groningen and I'm Dutch, I like to think from the Dutch perspective here. So it's recognized as a top master in the Keuzegids, which is a Dutch choice guide. You could literally translate it to for prospective students and their interests. It's recognized as a top masters there. It's recognized highly in our national student survey. More importantly than that, however, it is also very highly evaluated by its own alumni. 90% give it a positive experience after they finished with the program. This is all from our 2019 student survey, by the way, if you're curious about the data. But so far, we haven't seen any major change in the trends yet. Finally, we are also recognized by the European Commission as both a Master of Excellence and a success story. All right then. So I think those are some of the main things that you would want to know about Euroculture. Another question you could ask is, why should I study Euroculture, or why is this program interesting? So Euroculture is unique in the sense that it allows you to be mobile, flexible, interdisciplinary, and generally international in what you're studying, as well as in what you're doing. As a Euroculture student, you learn by doing perhaps what you could say as doing more unconventional things, such as moving around and experiencing other cultures and systems. That's really a highlight of the program, and one thing that we emphasize both in its contents as well as what you can do after the program as well. Right. So as I mentioned before, I see the slide is still a bit too big to get everything in the screen. Let's see if we could maybe change this up a little bit. Yes, well, I think this is fine. As you can see, Euroculture is a international master program run by a network of 12 different universities, 8 of which are in Europe. So these 8 universities are the following. We have the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, the University of Deusto Bilbao in Spain. We have the University of Göttingen in Germany. Maybe let's get out of the way here. We have the University of Krakow in Poland. We have the University of Olomouc in the Czech Republic. We have the University of Strasbourg in France. We have the University of Udine in Italy. And finally, we have the University of Uppsala in Sweden. So you can study and start your Euroculture journey at any one of these 8 European partner universities. Some people might hear of this program through their own national university, and they might think that you need to start at that specific university. That's not the case. When you apply for Euroculture, you can start at any one of these 8 universities. So if you maybe are studying, for example, at the University of Göttingen in Germany, there's no need for you to stay at the University of Göttingen. It's entirely possible for you to start your Euroculture program in Olomouc or in France, or maybe in Sweden. the choice is yours in that respect. Yes, and also, even on top of all of this, this is also generally considered to be kind of a big highlight of the program, is that we have 4 partner universities outside of Europe as well, where European nationals or European Economic Area students can actually apply to and go to for a semester as well. So maybe when you're looking at the University of University of Indianapolis in the USA. Maybe you're thinking about the University of Osaka in Japan. Maybe you're thinking of the University of Pune, India. Or maybe you're looking at the University of Mexico City in Mexico. You can study at any one of these 4 universities for your 3rd semester as well. So how and when you study where exactly, we'll also go over in a minute, because there's a lot of choices in Euroculture. And maybe especially if you're not super familiar with the program, it can seem a bit overwhelming, which is again why I recommend that if you ever have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. I'll get to them as soon as I'm able. Right. So, Euroculture is also considered to be an interdisciplinary and very flexible program, in the sense that Euroculture can give you a curriculum that is very tailored to your specific individual needs. You can follow the topics that are interesting to you and take your own path throughout the Euroculture program, because each of our Euroculture partner universities has a distinct specialization that enables you to pursue different topics depending on your own interests. So I'm not going to go over all the specializations of our different universities now. For that, I recommend that you take a look at our website, which I will link you to right now. Let's see. There you go. So if you go to euroculturemaster.eu/network/EU partner universities, you will have the opportunity to take a closer look at all of our partner universities and also what they specialize in. So maybe 1 or 2 examples. So the University of Uppsala in Sweden is actually based in the Faculty of Theology. And while they still focus on these topics of European integration from a political and cultural perspective, you might also find that they have 1 or 2 specialized seminars on the role of religion in Europe from a more sociological or societal perspective. So that's more or less how this works at different universities as well. So for example, the University of Strasbourg, as you may know, is very close to many European institutions, such as the European Parliament. And for people who are interested in maybe more institutional politics, diplomacy, they have many research seminars and maybe also connections that might be of interest to you there. In particular, Strasbourg has a very strong emphasis on human rights topics as well. So if those are things that interest you, you might be more interested in going to Strasbourg for your 1st or 2nd choice, as you would be to maybe Olomouc, which has a very historical perspective on Europe, which in itself might be interesting to students with more of a history in historiography or other forms of history studies. So these are the different kinds of perspectives you can also bring with you when you come to Euroculture. Because as I mentioned, Euroculture is very diverse in its topics. This means it also produces a lot of different output in terms of different kinds of master theses in different academic fields in different areas. And some of these examples you'll find on this slide here. So maybe what you find interesting is politics, soft power, and hard power discourses. So really institutional politics. So maybe the example in the top left here, the impact of hard power and soft power dynamics on China-EU diplomatic discourses between 2013 and 2018. Maybe you are more interested in questions of integration and identity. So maybe you see a thesis topic like a critical study of identity construction in Wales and the effects of European integration as something that's more relevant to the way you approach Euroculture. Maybe you come into Euroculture from the perspective of migration, minorities, and citizenship. So maybe migration studies. Maybe you can take a look at topics such as EU external border management. And maybe you can even construe it in a similar fashion to what this thesis did here, which is that it is actually a form of dominance and neocolonialism as part of European foreign policy during the refugee crisis of 2015. Finally, you can also take the perspective of culture, heritage, and memory. You can think of, in this case, public Holocaust commemoration in Austria and Germany as a way of expressing, national memory, and maybe even postulate that this is part of a more transnational European society. Yes, but these are just a few examples of the many, many different perspectives you can take in Euroculture. It's much broader than this. There's much more room for you to take a topic that is interesting to you as you explore what the different universities of our network might have to offer you. Yes, so Euroculture has an emphasis on mobility, which is what I mentioned before. We have 8 European partner universities, and you have the ability to change your university after your first semester and go elsewhere. In fact, this is a mandatory part of the program. And because we are hosting this international network, we also have a highly international classroom experience. So generally speaking, what you would find is that we have students from many different educational but also national backgrounds in the same classroom. If I look back on, for example, my own Euroculture experience in 2019, when I spent my first semester in Göttingen, in Groningen, and my second semester in Göttingen, what I found there is that we had a group of 24 students, if I remember correctly, and we had about 14 different nationalities in that group. So what that means is obviously that you are faced with students from a wide variety of different backgrounds, and this really changes the way in which you experience the classroom. You are learning firsthand from people who have lived in the cultures you might want to be studying. You are put in a position where you have to take your own cultural baggage with you and also make it work in an international experience where people might not have the same experiences or ideas about Europe or the same ideas about what it means to be European as you do. And these contrasts, these differences are definitely part of the experience. And that's also something very important about the Euroculture program. So I already kind of talked a lot about how you can move from one university to the other, but I could still imagine that this is kind of a complicated curriculum. So that's why I have this slide here that allows you to maybe see in a bit more detail where you can go each semester and what you do during that semester. So let's imagine that you applied to Euroculture and you were accepted into the program. First of all, during your application, you submitted the universities of your preference. So maybe you were interested in going to Groningen, maybe you're interested in going to Udine, maybe you're interested in going to Strasbourg. You took those 3 universities and you applied to Euroculture on our website, and you submitted those 3 preferences. After your application was considered and accepted, we assigned you to one of our European universities. In this case, we gave you your first choice. That will be University 1 that you see on the slide here. So you will be going to that university for your first semester. What you do there during your first semester is more or less the same at each and every one of our partner universities, with a few minor differences here and there. Because the first semester of Euroculture is basically designed to account for the differences in perspective that all of us bring when we start studying Euroculture. Because when you enter your first Euroculture class, you might find that students have a background in law, European politics, maybe a language, maybe history. So while those students might have a lot of specialized knowledge on one topic, they might not know so much about other topics yet. And that's what the first semester offers. It offers a series of foundational courses that are considered to be maybe a little bit intense, but also very informative, that help you get up to speed on the different perspectives that Euroculture teaches throughout the 2 years of the program. So maybe to clarify that and make it a bit more specific, if you maybe have a background in cultural studies, that one course on the cultural perspectives of Europe will be easier for you, but you will also have a course on the political construction of Europe. You will have a course on the legal construction of Europe. As I said, you'll have a course on the cultural construction of Europe. And at the end of the day, this is also rounded off with a course on more transferable skills that work across the different courses as well. So we call those courses Euro competences. And what you'll learn during these courses are general academic skills that are necessary to develop yourself academically throughout the Euroculture program. So some of our students might have more experience with academic writing before they come into the masters. Other students might not have as much academic writing experience because maybe they didn't have to do so much of that in their own national context. Your Competence 1 is designed to help you get up to speed on some of these ideas, like referencing properly, knowing how to present your research, summarizing, maybe also more other kinds of oral presentation skills such as debate. Many of these foundational principles of academia will be discussed and developed on. And generally, students find this course very useful because it helps them prepare for what comes in the next semesters as well. So in your first semester, you will have 30 ECTS credits worth of courses. If you start, usually most Euroculture programs start around September and end around Christmas, maybe to January for the final deadlines. That's your first semester, and at this point, you completed 30 ECTS credits worth of points, and you'll be asked to select your second university to go to. If you are an Erasmus Mundus grant student, your second semester university will have been discussed and set with you in advance. So in that case, you don't have to worry about this procedure. But if you are a self-financing student for Euroculture, then you will find that you will have to select your second university around October, November. So maybe 1 or 2 months into the start of your first semester. We will give you more information at that point. So we'll give you a detailed booklet that explains all the different universities, what they do, what they're focused on, and based on that, you'll be able to make your decision. Based on the decision that you make, you will then be asked to prepare for your mobility semester there. You'll be put into contact with our Euroculture coordinator at that university. You'll get some support for maybe finding good housing. If you're from outside the European Union, you'll also get support for how to get a student visa. All these kinds of different elements Euroculture helps you with as well. Each of our 8 universities has their own coordinator, and they're all very helpful and very close to the students. They know what's going on with them. So you can always go to them for help with practical things. So this also maybe eases the burden of having to move to another country a bit, because this is something that many people consider to be quite stressful and quite intensive, but our coordinators are there to help you with the process as well. So let's imagine once again that we finished everything in our first semester properly, and it's January, we finished our final exams and we're doing well. It's time to move on to our second semester. Maybe you spent your first semester in Udine, the second one will be in, I don't know, let's say Olomouc. In that case, you will be given information about the different courses that will be on offer there, and you will go to that university, find your housing there, and spend your second semester of that year in that place. What you will do in that second university is, first of all, you'll be offered a series of specialized research seminars that are, as I mentioned previously, kind of based in the specialization of that university. So, for example, in Olomouc, there's a very historical perspective on the context of Europe. One of your research seminars might be, this is something that they've done in the past. I'm not sure if they're still offering this course, but it was a course on the history of witchcraft in Central and Eastern Europe. And that might be one of the things you might be learning, but there are many other different kinds of choices that you'll have to make. So that will differ based on the university, and if you are more interested in getting more details about what each university offers, please let me know. I can send you contact details by email of our different Euroculture coordinators, and they can answer your questions in more specifics about each university. I don't know the course offer from every one of our 8 partner universities off the top of my head, unfortunately. So I'll be able to help you further and give you the right contact information to have your question answered. Secondly, there are also some skills, much like in the first semester, that are taught everywhere. Each of our partner universities will offer you a hands-on course in research methodologies and theories. So this course is designed to help you learn or deepen your understanding of how to do research, what kind of methodologies to use for your research, what kinds of theories and theoretical frameworks might be most useful for the design of your own research project. Each week, at least that's my experience with the courses, each week you'll be going over different kinds of methodologies. So one week you might be discussing research ethics of maybe doing interviews with human subjects, while the next week you'll be focusing on discourse analysis and very qualitative methods of research, while maybe the week afterwards you'll be looking at quantitative research methods or maybe mixed methods of research. So you'll be exposed to a number of different methodologies that might be useful to you, and the course is designed to then help you deepen your understanding of those things that you find interesting. Finally, every university also offers a course in project management. So project management basically means setting up a specific goal with a group of your students and thinking about what can we do, what can we execute, what is the timeline in which we can do that in such a way that it remains feasible. Those are the kinds of questions that project management is designed to help you with. So maybe you're interested in doing a cultural event, so maybe a music event that exposes people to many different kinds of European or even non-European music. What kinds of things do you need? What's the budget? How can you maybe get funding for your project? How can you, I don't know, find the right kinds of musicians? So how do you network? How do you navigate these different things? That's some of the things that are discussed, and also you get practice with during project management. Of course, the main goal of that course is for you to execute your own project. So it's really a chance for you to design something that's very interesting to you personally, and to make an impact as you're already studying the program. So there's also the intensive program that follows at the end of the first year. I will not go over the intensive program right now, but just in short, it's a summer school that all students from all the 8 different partner universities within Europe get to attend. You have to prepare a paper for it. You do all kinds of lectures, panel discussions, Q&A sessions, career events. It's a 1-week summer school where Euroculture students come together and discuss all these kinds of different things. And it's a really amazing experience. And it's definitely really the highlight of the first year. At the end of all that, to close off that first year with every Euroculture student and to wish each other good luck for the second year, and to maybe get the chance to meet each and every Euroculture student and the chance to exchange ideas with other very like-minded individuals. I'll go a little bit more into what this means later in the presentation, but really the intensive program is one of the main highlights of the Euroculture program. So let's just say we're going back to our imaginary situation where you finished your first year of Euroculture successfully, you've completed your intensive program, you had the chance to meet everyone, and now it's time to choose your third university. In the third semester, you have the most amount of choices available. So you can do basically 3 different tracks within the third semester. You can only choose one of those 3 tracks. So just to name them all, you have the European research track, you have the non-European research track, and you have our European professional track. So what do these 3 different tracks mean? The first I mentioned was the European research track, which is you go to one of our 8 universities within the network. It can be a university you've already been to, but it doesn't have to be. You can go there and spend an internship with a current researcher who's working on a current project, while also doing a few specialized research seminars. A little bit like in the second semester, except with a more academic focus, and really more so about getting hands-on academic experience. So the research internship in particular, it's also part of that internship is also that you produce some output. So at the end of the research internship, you will need to have some kind of research experience that you can maybe also put in your CV. Maybe if you're interested in a PhD position, some students have successfully managed to get a publication out of what they did during their research semesters, while other students, get references, or maybe they produce a data set for a project as part of that research. So it's really about getting some hands-on experience with academic research, and also getting experience that you can also use after you're done with Euroculture. Yes, so that's really what the European research track is about. It's about getting research experience with our European partners and doing specialized research in a particular area that's interesting to you. Secondly, you have the European professional track, which essentially is our placement semester. So maybe if you're interested in doing a professional internship with, just to name a few examples, we have a slide for this actually. So you can do work placements at a wide variety of different places. So maybe you're interested in doing advocacy, research, or media studies. So you could go to the European Center for Minority Issues, European Movement International, the Center for European Studies, or Politico. At the same time, you might be more interested in cultural diplomacy and lobbying. So maybe you go to NEVIAR, maybe you go to the Institut Français, maybe you go to the British Council. Or let's say if you're very much more interested in like international governance, so maybe the European Commission, UNICEF, all these more, let's say, bigger political institutions. If you're very interested in that, then you can definitely get an internship at those places during the Euroculture program, during your third semester. Of course, while the program might be called Euroculture, it is also possible to work with national institutions for your third semester. But of course, as long as those national institutions have a somewhat international focus. So maybe you can be thinking of the Dutch representation to the EU. Maybe you're interested in the German missions in the United States. Maybe you want to work with, I don't know, a Ministry of Foreign Affairs or Ministry of Public Affairs. And these are just a few of the many, many options that you can choose from during your third semester, research, I should say professional track. If you are interested in even more placements that Euroculture students have taken part in the past, send me a message at Euroculture. Let's see, Euroculture at rug.nl. Excuse me. Just type that again. All right, so that's something you're interested in. please go to euroculture.rug.nl, send us a message, and we can give you even more detailed information on our placements, because there's an enormous list. I think it's a document of about 80 pages at this point, with all different kinds of internship providers. There's many of them, and we can maybe give you some more examples. But it's also because Euroculture students can choose what they want to do for their internship themselves. We don't assign an internship to you. This means that there are many different choices that you can make, and that's also what students have done historically. Finally, regardless of what you do in your third semester, you also have to do a thesis proposal. You have to prepare for your fourth semester, which is where you write the master thesis project. And the thesis proposal is more or less just to help you get started with the project in proper time. So you have to provide us with an example of what you want to be studying. We want to have maybe a thesis topic. We want to have some general idea of what you would want to be studying, so we can assign you relevant supervisors, so we can get to work preparing for your fourth semester as well. So maybe just to reiterate, you have three options in your third semester. You have the European research track, which I mentioned is maybe if you're interested in a more academic career after you're done, or maybe if you're interested in research, that's the choice for you. You can do a European professional track, which is working with a professional organization that is relevant to the themes of Euroculture. And finally, you also have the non-European research track. So as I mentioned, we have a total of, just get the right slide. Yeah, we have 4 partner universities outside of Europe. And this semester, your third semester, is where you can spend some time in that country. So you can go to the US, you can go to Japan, India, or Mexico, depending on your preference. If you are EU or within the European Economic Area, of course. Unfortunately, this track is not available to non-European nationals. Yes. So what I just wanted to mention about these tracks is that when you go to these tracks, you'll be basically, the goal of that semester is to submerge yourself in that country's culture, academic and otherwise, for that semester. Our partner university there will take care of you and create a specialized program for you that includes excursions, specialized research seminars that might be interesting to Euroculture students, and they will organize, let's say, an entire program for you that is tailored to what Euroculture students would find interesting. You will have a lot of opportunities to explore the country, the opportunity to maybe see what that country has to offer, maybe also for your future career. So this is definitely something that if you are a European student with a passing interest, maybe even in some of these countries, we would already heartily recommend that you apply. There's also some financial compensation available for your travels, so you don't have to pay for everything yourself. I should say it doesn't cover everything, but there is compensation available that maybe can help you smooth over some of the financial costs for studying in these countries. Right. So those are all the 3 different options that you can choose from for your third semester. So that's a lot of information already. 3 tracks, I'll just go over them one more time. The European research track, the European professional track, and the non-European research track. Those are your 3 different options that you can partake in for your third semester. Regardless of what you do for your third semester, you have to come back to University 1, so that will be the university here, or you have to go back to University 2, that's the university you studied here, for your final thesis writing project. So, yes, in the fourth semester, you write your thesis. You have to prepare and continue the work that you did in your third semester and go for the actual writing process. you will be supervised by a supervisor from both your first or your second university, but you get to choose where you want to return to. So maybe if you, I don't know, just like the library better in country 2, then that's maybe a reason to continue and go back to country 2. Maybe you have more academic professional reasons for wanting to move back to a specific country. Everything in that regard is possible, as long as it's within the framework of either being your first or second university. Of course, every student also does one more thing next to their thesis, which is the project application training. So Euroculture is very interested in preparing their alumni for the professional world, for the labor market, or maybe the academic world after they're done with their studies. And part of that, we can see it in other elements as well. So you have project management is very useful for work after Euroculture, transferable skills, maybe even research methodologies or some of the things you learn in the seminars. Many of these skills can be very transferable and very useful after the program as well. But the final thing we do in this regard is project application training. So within the 4th semester, you'll have the opportunity to prepare a project application for either maybe a PhD. So maybe you want to create an outline for your PhD project. You will get the opportunity to prepare for that right away in the program while you're still writing your master thesis. You'll be supervised by professors who know how this is done, obviously. So on the one hand, you have a PhD track, but if you're not super interested in academia and you maybe want to focus more on other kinds of professional development, it might be more interesting for you to take a look at the professional track that we have within project application training. So we have an academic approach to project application writing, but we also have a professional approach to project application training. And for that course, you'll be asked to prepare within a group, prepare a project application, maybe for funding as part of some kind of cultural event. Maybe it's more of a political event. Maybe it ties a bit into what you do during project management as well, some of the skills you learn there anyway. So project application training is more so a way to prepare you for what comes after you finish Euroculture. And some of these project applications that you've prepared there can actually be used in the real world, let's say the real world, after you're done with the program. So that's entirely possible. Right. And at the end of this, that's kind of the basic outline of the program. I speak in many general terms because there's many choices that you could make as part of Euroculture. So that's really something I wanted to highlight here with this slide, is to go over the different kinds of approaches you can have to Euroculture. Maybe you want to tailor your studies towards preparing you for the labor market. Maybe you're more interested in academic experience. Regardless of what you want, you can make Euroculture help you specialize in that direction. So some people might be thinking at this point, well, it seems that all of this is quite general and quite broad. I would say that the opposite is true. I would say that this is actually very highly specialized. The problem is that you have multiple ways by which to approach your specialization, which is why it might seem like this is very general. Actually, in fact, Euroculture is very good in helping you prepare for a specialized particular field after you're done, as well as it might be able to help you prepare for a more broader all-around profile, depending on what you do with it, depending on how you navigate all these different semesters. So that's really the point I wanted to highlight here, that Euroculture enables you to prepare for your life after Euroculture in the way that best fits with what you want to do. Okay. As I kind of mentioned, Euroculture is very focused on having international and interdisciplinary approaches to particular subjects. So the way in which we do that is by having project-based active learning in small-scale classes. So usually we only take in around 100 students for Euroculture every year. And we divide that amongst our 8 different universities. So you would have maybe a maximum of 20 to 25 students for each university. And this is very valuable because it enables you to have real connections with the people in the classroom. Maybe if you're used to, let's say, bigger lecture rooms of 200, 300 students or even more sitting in one room, not really getting to know each other. This is really not much like that. So you'll find that you'll basically be spending with most of your time during Euroculture with a group of up to 20 people, and you'll really have the chance to get to know them and develop your intercultural skills, because you'll be talking and working with people from all kinds of different backgrounds all the time. Because we work with many project-based assessments and many group-based assessments, you'll also be forced professionally to work with students from these different backgrounds. So just to kind of put that into perspective there, if you start Euroculture in Euroculture Groningen, which is the course that I have the most direct experience with, you will have to do basically a group assignment for every course you are a part of. And you'll be forced to work with your peers every week to prepare presentations, to write shared papers. There's a lot of different opportunities to develop your intercultural skills, both academically and professionally, as well as personally. Let's see, should we cover this? I think we kind of already mentioned this, so I'm just going to say a few things about this. So Euroculture does heavily focus on the employability of graduates, and we do that in 2 different ways. So the first of which is during the program. So during the program, we have different kinds of courses, which I've gone into quite a bit at this point, that have helped you develop skills that are useful for getting employed after the program. And also, after students have finished the program, after they are considered to be alumni, we also keep in touch with them. We try to foster a European community of Euroculture students that, stays in touch, helps each other out with professional and all kinds of academic opportunities. We try to keep alumni involved in the program at multiple points, not only, let's say, for events, but also actually in things like reflections on where we could improve the program. Euroculture students are involved both as they are studying the program and also after they are considered alumni. We have very good lines of communication with the different teachers who, let's say, the relationships that you have with the teachers are very non-hierarchical most of the time. So you'll find that it's very easy to just go up to them and maybe ask them a question, and just maybe to build a community with your fellow students, but also with your fellow teachers and also alumni of the program. That sense of community building is very important to us. So we hope that that is something that if you're interested in the program, you'll also be willing to partake in as the program develops for you. Right. What I will say is maybe explain a little bit about what you do once you're graduated. So because Euroculture students focus on mobility, relevant soft skills, and project training, you'll find that that actually helps you prepare for the labor market quite well. And if we go back to the results of the 2019 alumni survey, we will find that 70% of our alumni find a relevant job within 3 months. And that's especially for a program that is considered to be in the arts and social sciences. That's a very good statistic to keep in mind. So Euroculture has a proven effect on your employability after the program. So that's definitely something to keep in mind if that's what you're maybe looking for after your studies. Where do Euroculture graduates work? Well, these are some of the main fields that Euroculture students might end up working in. So again, this is from a 2019 survey, so it's still quite recent. About 20% of our students end up in education. Similar percentages also ends up in politics and international relations, or maybe arts and culture. So, oh, no, I'm sorry. That's actually the wrong color. I think we're missing the dark brown statistic of 22% here. I'm curious to know what this would be exactly. Nevertheless, I think this should give you a good impression of what our students do. So, arts and culture, education, politics and international relations, communications and media, the environment, and social affairs. But there are also some more smaller fields where some people end up in based on their profile. So, security and anti-terrorism is one of them. Or maybe international development. So this is mainly just to highlight the different kinds of perspectives or the different kinds of fields that you could be working in after you finish your studies. Yeah, if you want, I can send you these slides. Just send me an email at euroculture@rug.nl. So that's also in the chat. And yeah, we'll be able to give you this information as well in the form of the slides. I see I've already been talking for 50 minutes, which is quite a while. So, yeah, this is just the final part that I maybe want to mention. So, the IP is really a highlight of the program. It's a moment, an opportunity to network with students across the Euroculture Consortium, but also staff. It's an opportunity to network. It's an ability to speak to different kinds of people with very shared interests. Even if they come at it from different perspectives. During the week, you'll be, taking excursions, you'll be engaging in discussion, you'll be engaging in peer review academically. So there's all kinds of different activities that are very stimulating as a Euroculture student. Let's see. I think I've already mentioned most of what I want to mention there, except for the fact that it's just generally a really good time. So it's a very enjoyable experience, and I definitely it's one of the reasons you should apply to this program. It's just that week in itself. Yeah, absolutely. All right then. Maybe let's talk a bit about what you need to do to apply. And this is the final slide I'll cover before going to the Q&A section. So, what are the requirements for Euroculture? So, first of all, you need to hold a BA in a field relevant to Euroculture, which is quite broad. So, it needs to be in the arts, humanities, or social sciences. This can include European law as well. In some cases, it can include students with, let's say, international relations profiles. Economics is possible, but in those cases, we do ask that students provide maybe some additional experience. If they're kind of in this gray area of will or won't I be able to apply, because there are a few cases of that. If you're in doubt about whether your profile is sufficient, first check out our website because we list out a series of degrees there. I can look this up. Right. So let's see. Am I still live right now? I'd hope to think so. Let's see. I'm sorry. I seem to be having some technical difficulty. Okay, I think we're still here. Yes. Okay. Sorry, everyone. I had a small issue with my connection for a second. Uh, I think you were still able to see me, but I couldn't really see anything else. So sorry about that, but it should be back now. Okay. So just where I left off. So if you don't know exactly whether your bachelor's diploma is sufficient or whether your academic background is sufficient, please send us an email at euroculturemaster.eu or through euroculture@rug.nl, and we can take into consideration what your profile is and whether it's considered sufficient. We need to see a proof of English proficiency as well. So if you didn't study in English during your bachelor's, we need some proof that you're going to be able to perform well in a context that is fully English spoken. So this means providing us with a test result of a certain quality. For the exact requirements, I am once again going to just direct you to euroculturemaster.eu/how to apply, because they are quite detailed there, and I think there's nothing that I can say here that is particularly is going to add much to what is already on the website. So, but if you have a question, I can answer it. A motivation letter should be submitted. During the Q&A, we might come into some tips and tricks for how to write that if you have some questions about that, but I'll be happy to give you some advice on what to do there. Please upload your CV as well. So just make sure that it's updated, it's recent, it's complete. It shows all the relevant experiences that you might have had before you studied Euroculture that might be relevant to Euroculture. But what constitutes a relevant experience is, of course, a very broad category. If you have questions about what kinds of experiences might be relevant, again, good questions for the chat. We'll be able to go over that in the Q&A as well. We also need 2 references. So one of your references needs to be academic. So it needs to be submitted by a scholar or a teacher that you've worked with during your undergraduate studies. And another letter may also be academic from another source, but it might also be maybe from a placement provider or some other professional organization that you worked for an extended period of time. So you have some options there. So at least one of your letters needs to be academic, but the other one may also be non-academic, but on the other hand, may also be academic. That's your choice. Yes. All right. So finally, we would like to see an academic writing sample. So show us that you know how to write academically. So if you upload your thesis and it's in English, that can constitute a writing sample. But on the other hand, if you maybe have a paper, a short one, that's up to 2,000 words or something, that can also be qualifying. We just need to see that you are able to format things correctly, that you are able to reference, that you have this basic understanding of writing samples. If you don't have any such documents available at all from your undergraduate students, you can submit your application and say this, but of course, the quality of your application will suffer as a result, because this is something that we do need to test students and applicants on in advance. So the overall quality of your application will be a bit lower if you do not have any academic writing samples compared to somebody who did submit an academic writing sample. So that's maybe just to keep in mind if you want to apply for Euroculture. So deadlines. If you are interested in the Erasmus Mundus scholarship, these deadlines do not apply. These are the deadlines for self-financing students. If you wish to apply for the Erasmus Mundus scholarship, then everything I just mentioned needs to be ready by January 15, and it needs to be submitted in good order by January 15. If For example, if you submit anything past January 15 that we did not explicitly agree with you on, then it will not be considered, and your application will unfortunately also be disregarded for the Erasmus Mundus scholarship. So it's very, very important that you make sure you have submitted all your documents in time and to make sure that nothing is missing. So please double check your application and make sure that everything is uploaded in good order, because we have many applications to go through and we don't have the time to go through applications and send you emails asking you to please submit another document, etc., etc., etc. If it's not complete, unfortunately, we cannot consider it. So please be very, very careful before you finalize your application and make sure that everything is there. The other principle, though, is that early applications are encouraged, and that is true. That's mostly just for your benefit to have everything in order in advance, because especially on January 15th, our website will be quite heavily taxed. There will be a lot of internet traffic. There will be a lot of people trying to submit their applications. And as a result, the website might slow down or crash or might otherwise have problems for your application. So we recommend that you maybe submit a bit earlier just to avoid all the traffic and make sure that everything is in order in time. So for multiple reasons, we recommend that you have this done a bit earlier than the deadline on 15th of January for the Erasmus Mundus scholarship. And if you are a self-financing student, we are a bit more lenient. You will have until May 1 at the end of the day to apply. And it's also possible to be admitted to the program conditionally, whereas that is not the case for Erasmus Mundus graduates. So maybe if you apply by May 1, but you will only get your bachelor's diploma in August of 2022, you can still apply as a self-financing student, but you cannot apply as an Erasmus Mundus scholarship applicant. Right. I think that covers everything I wanted to cover here. I'm not going to go over the tuition fees into too much detail because I think many of you will be more interested in the Erasmus Mundus scholarship application, and as a result, you will not really need to pay tuition fees if you get accepted into the program. So yeah, I would just like to open the floor to questions and answers from the chat. And I saw some traffic already. So let me just get rid of the presentation and here we go. Right. Let's see. Yes, I can see many questions in the chat actually. So thank you all so much for coming in and having a chat with me. So well, good afternoon to all of you. I'm just going to go to the questions and see what they are. So BTB asks, would it be an issue if a student attends a university with specialized seminars that might be different from the student's chosen thesis topics? Yes, that's absolutely fine. If you want to go through Euroculture, kind of developing your career trajectory as you go, that is no problem. So that's maybe even a bit true in my own experience. The specialized seminars that I chose were on the connection between Europe and the United States, because the University of Göttingen has this special connection to the United States, but also to the University of India in Pune, and the University of Pune in India. And I didn't really spend much time in my master thesis writing about the United States or Europe's connection to it. So it's actually, in many cases, not everything in Euroculture needs to be aligned perfectly with your thesis plan in advance. It's also quite possible to maybe take a little bit less time focusing on one particular topic and then move on to something else the next semester. That's possible too. Yeah, so that's definitely that's your choice as an individual if you want to maybe have a complete plan before you start, or if you just want to kind of see how it goes. Both ways of studying Euroculture work because it's your study plan. It's your trajectory through Euroculture, so that's your choice. All right then. I'd love to have the contact of the coordinator from the University of Deus to Bilbao to learn more about their field of focus. Absolutely. Let's see. Just to answer that question right away, I think we have that on our website right now. Network, Partner Universities Europe. Let's go to Deusto. Yes. So this is a trick. Can I answer a specific question? Maybe. Okay. So for the answer to Beta's question, if you go to this one right here, it's at the bottom of the page. It will be Maite Sagasti. That's the name of the coordinator there. You can just answer. You can ask your question there to her, and she'll be able to give you more information. In a previous webinar, you mentioned the 3 tracks students can choose in semester 3. I am especially interested in the research internship. Can you tell us more in detail? I can, if you want. It depends, however, on what you want me to tell exactly. So, how about this? Because I did talk about it a fair bit during the presentation. So, could you maybe specify, would you like to hear more from my personal experience of what it's like to do a research internship? Or would you like to know something about a specific university? If you could maybe just specify the question a bit so I don't just wax philosophical for 20 minutes about the research track. So just let me know what you prefer I talk about, and then we can go over that. Can the recommendation letter be electronically signed and then printed on the official letterhead, or is it mandatory to sign by hand afterwards? A digital signature is acceptable. Previously, we weren't so lenient with this, but because of COVID, we understand that it's sometimes difficult for maybe your referees to get to an office or get to a printer. So yes, digital signatures are accepted. And if it's printed on the official letterhead of the university, that's perfect. But what we want to know more than anything else is we want to see a clear signature. We want to know the full name of the signatory. We want to know their institutional affiliation. So who do they work for? We want to know their email address so we can verify information with them and see that, that the letter is authentic. These kinds of things are important to us. So if we can verify that, then some other things like the letterhead or a stamp are appreciated, but not always fully required. However, whenever those are available, please do submit them because it helps us greatly with the application. Yeah. If I opt for the internship, Sarah asks, will I be provided with some guide in order to apply for the most suitable placement based on my background and my future career achievements? Yes. So we, in preparation for the 3rd semester, will give you all kinds of guidelines for each choice. We have a digital environment for Euroculture students called the Euroculture Manuals and Guidelines. And there we have specialized guidelines for every semester available to read at any time. So even when you start your 1st semester, you can also already start reading up about some of the things that, or some of the guidelines that you will have to be working with in your 3rd semester or maybe your 4th semester. So yes, in short, we will have all kinds of placement guidelines. You will also talk during your courses with teachers about what might be interesting to you. Maybe they have some suggestions for organizations. So absolutely, it's totally possible to know a little bit more about this. And we have good guidelines for how to apply to an internship as well. We go over that in quite specific detail throughout the yes, that's the 2nd semester. Yeah, that's in the 2nd semester. Let's see. Yes, okay. So Adil Bazai asks, please tell us more about the motivational letter. What are the most important questions that need to be answered? Can we mention our preferences of universities in the motivational letter? So that's a great question. Sure, I'll be happy to tell you a little bit more about what we require from you with the motivational letter. So the motivational letter is relatively short. It's only 5,000 characters, which is not that much. So you don't have a lot of time to go into detail on everything that you want to do. So what we recommend is maybe think about your motivational letter like this. How does Euroculture, the question that you need to answer is, how does Euroculture fit within the trajectory of your professional and academic and your personal life? So what have you done in the past? So maybe how does your previous academic or professional experience help you prepare for Euroculture? But also, what will studying Euroculture help you with after you're done with Euroculture? So it's kind of like what we like you to do is to tell us the story of why you think it is important to study Euroculture. If a specific university is very important for that point, so maybe if you have a very strong personal connection to a particular university or a specific topic that really caught your attention and you were like, yes, this is why I need to study Euroculture, then please do mention that in your motivation letter. But because you only have 5,000 characters, I don't recommend spending a lot of time talking about all the universities you'd like to go to, because you don't have the space for it, right? What is important is that we get an understanding of who you are as an academic, as a professional, and as a person. Those are the three dimensions that we're kind of interested in the motivation letter. You also don't have to mention every single thing you've done in the past, right? You also have to upload your CV. So maybe don't treat the motivation letter like it's an extension of your CV. Because you already mentioned a lot of things in your CV, and we already will take those things into consideration. What we want to know is kind of like, maybe you can think of it like this. The CV tells a factual account of all the things you've done in the past, but the motivation letter tells us why you've done all these different things. So that's what the motivation letter should focus on. How does my professional experience culminate in me studying Euroculture, and what will I do after I study Euroculture? Those are the questions that you should be asking yourself and answering in the motivation letter within those 5,000 characters. And if you can do a good job of that, you will have written a very strong motivation letter. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see. So in short, yes, you can mention your preferred universities, but don't spend all of your time on that. Tell us a little bit more generally about yourself, your professional, academic, and personal life. Those are some things that you should definitely try to focus on in the motivation letter. Eileen asks, my major is education, which is not related to Euroculture. Am I eligible to apply? That's a difficult question, obviously, because I don't have your transcript of records in front of me. I can't see your diploma, so I can't give you a definitive yes or no, but I should say that education by itself is not generally considered to be eligible by itself. So this is also why I mentioned a bit about the motivation letter and also your CV, why you should mention all relevant experiences, because maybe while your bachelor studies might not be super relevant to Euroculture, you might also have worked with a European organization before you studied or after you studied your undergraduate studies. So in that case, we would still seriously consider your application, right? So that's the trade-off here. So the answer is, are you eligible to apply? I cannot say on this information alone, but education is indeed a background that is not considered to be generally eligible. So you would need some kind of other experience significantly to help your application be more powerful, let's say, to be stronger. So yes. So you are not ineligible to apply, I cannot say, but education is not the best fit for Euroculture by itself. Maybe that's a good way to say it. Should the universities chosen, in particular the third semester track, be related to the topic chosen for the final thesis? Sarah asks. The answer is no. It's useful, but it doesn't have to be. So you get to choose your own topics, right? And it's totally possible that some of the things you learn in your research semester, maybe in your third semester, just end up not being very relevant to what you're interested in. In that case, it's fine for you to go a different direction with your thesis. That's your choice. However, if you spend a lot of time in your third semester thinking about a particular research topic, then it might be easier for you to adapt that and put that in your master thesis. However, there are many students who don't do this. There are many students who take all kinds of different approaches each semester and don't apply all of it in their master's thesis. Indirectly, of course, every experience academically will be relevant for you, but no, you don't have to kind of have this very clear, strong red line of topics throughout your Euroculture program. That's not necessary. You can do that if you want, and it might help you stay focused, and it might help you develop more clearly into a particular profile, but it's not necessary. I hope that answers your question. Is uploading previous study thesis necessary? Can we upload our bachelor studies thesis as an academic essay? If it's in English, yes, that's fine. Yeah, if you haven't written, because for example, there are some countries where you don't have to write a bachelor's thesis, so it's possible to apply to Euroculture without a bachelor's thesis. However, an application is generally considered to be stronger if we have a clear proof of your academic writing skills, right? Because it gives us more to assess. So that's something it's a complicated thing for us as well if you don't have a bachelor's thesis. So if you have writing samples available, please submit them wherever possible. But of course, if you've just never had the opportunity to write one as part of your undergraduate students, then that's not something we can do much about. But that doesn't exclude you from application or even making a chance of getting the scholarship. But yes, please, if you have writing samples available, try to submit them wherever possible. Sarah asks, can I still be eligible if I've already obtained a master's degree in my country? So that's a difficult question because it depends on your country and the master's degree. So if you have earned the equivalent of a European master's degree from your country, then this will affect your chances of getting an Erasmus Mundus scholarship. You see, the problem is that the Erasmus Mundus scholarship, as formulated under that project of Erasmus Plus, has the goal of giving students from outside of Europe and inside of Europe, in some cases, the opportunity to study in Europe and take the next step in their academic career. This is why we do give priority treatment to students who do not have a European equivalent master's degree, who only have an undergraduate degree for the scholarship. Because that's more in line with the mission of the Erasmus Plus project. So, yes, if you already have an equivalent master's degree, this will have an impact on your chance to get the scholarship. However, it doesn't exclude you from the scholarship, because there are some cases where students with a master's degree do get the scholarship. So you still have a chance, right? So I would definitely still encourage you to apply, but priority treatment is given to those who only have undergraduate or, let's say, equivalent European experience at a bachelor's level only. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Are interviews part of the admissions processes and award of the scholarships? No, generally speaking, we do not have personal interviews with you. Your motivation letter is kind of the testament of your character that we use during the application process. There are some rare cases where if we have some clarifying questions about your application, that we sometimes set up a small in-person meeting with you, but this generally doesn't happen. So it's not a set part of the procedure, but sometimes if we need to know a bit more about you, we might ask you to have a short video call with us. But that usually doesn't happen. I should say that if you are awarded with the Erasmus Mundus scholarship, that you will get video calls with me, actually, in this case, and we will start discussing how the procedure for getting the scholarship and things will work. So if you are awarded with the scholarship, you'll be talking to me again in the future, and we'll be discussing how you get the scholarship, how the payouts are organized. We'll tell you and help you with signing the contracts and things like this. So we'll be there to help you step by step, and we'll be in touch personally as well. But not unless that's not a part of the application procedure itself. Jong Hap asks, can I upload my IELTS certificate after the deadline? No. All requirements, all documents that are part of the application requirements need to be submitted by January 15 and not a day or even a minute after the deadline. Again, this is because of the regulations that we have for these windows, you see. Maybe that's good to explain. The European Commission only allows our window of applications to be open for a set amount of time. And we also have to spend a lot of time assessing applicants, preparing them and also we also have to prepare the scholarship holders for their first semester in September. And, especially getting a visa, getting everything organized takes a lot of time. So we don't have the time in our schedule to be able to ask for documents after the deadline. We need the documentation to be complete by January 15 if we want to get everything done in time. So no, if you don't have a language certificate by January 15 available, then your application will unfortunately not be considered for the scholarship. So if you have a way of maybe getting an urgent result, I'd recommend that you maybe try and put that procedure in motion, or maybe try to contact them about this. Because yes, if your application is not complete by January 15, we cannot consider it, unfortunately. So another, can you please explain how to approach a motivation letter for Euroculture? What are you looking for in that essay? I think I've already answered this. So maybe just to go over it again in short, give us a trajectory of what you did in the past and how it will help you study Euroculture, but also give us an impression of what you want to do after Euroculture. So give us some details about what in your past made you interested in Euroculture, and give us some details about why you want to study the program. Don't focus too much on the specific universities you want to go to, unless you have a very strong personal connection to a particular university. But there is no ideal motivation letter, right? That's something to say. It's a subjective thing, because it depends on what you've done in the past and why Euroculture might be a good program for you. That can vary from person to person. So I think I've covered most of the details. If you maybe missed that, I recommend maybe going back a few minutes in the presentation, because I did cover a bit more in detail how the motivation letter should be written a few minutes back. Right. Vincent asks, my current passport won't be valid for the whole duration of the program. I can get a new one before the start of the program, but for the January 15 deadline, can I submit my current passport? Yes, you can submit your current passport, but we recommend that you send us the new version as quickly as you have it by email. And please also mention your application number so we can put that together. Because, if you submit a valid passport by January 15, that's what we need to have. But if that then expires in a few months, then for example, we would need to get the new one before your current one expires. Generally speaking, if it's possible, we do recommend that you have a passport that's valid for the full 2 years of the program, because it can get complicated with certain admissions procedures and visa application procedures if you work with 2 different passport documents. That's the main reason why we ask for one that's valid for the full 2 years, but that's not a hard requirement. That's just a convenience thing. So yes, you can actually submit a new passport to us after the January 15th deadline, but you need to submit a valid one before January 15 as well. It just doesn't need to be valid for the full 2 years of the program. Okay. All right. Great. I think you have covered what I wanted to know about the research internship, but if you wish to share about your experience, that would also be appreciated. I'll try and do that. I'll just make a note. Experience research track. I'll go over the other questions first, and if we have some time, maybe I'll go into my experience in the research track a little bit more in detail, because I did one myself in the 3rd semester from my Euroculture program. So I have some hands-on experience with how that works and what you do. So yeah, if I don't get around to it, you can also send me an email. I'd be happy to tell you more about my experience through email as well. So if I okay, if I did a student exchange program at one of the partner universities of this program, am I eligible to apply for this program after I graduate from my bachelor's? So yes, that's fine, and that's no problem. I'm assuming what you're talking about here is like an Erasmus Plus semester for your undergraduate studies at one of the partner universities. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. You can do that again, because you can even get Erasmus Plus funding again, because it's a different educational cycle. So bachelor degree is kind of a separate environment. So it would be a different story if you'd already done an exchange program during a master's program. But if it's during your bachelor's program, then it's no problem. So yeah, in fact, it's maybe even useful for you to have already been at one of our partner universities. That's no problem. Is a certificate issued by the university which shows I studied undergraduate degree in English accepted, or a substitute for the test result? And the answer is yes. If you fully studied English for your undergraduate students, so if you have, let's say, a full bachelor's degree studied in the English language, and your university can provide you with a statement that explains that this is the case, then this is an eligible substitute for the language test. So if you have that statement, then you do not need to submit your language test. Because the goal of the language test requirement is that we want to know that you can perform well in academic English. We need proof of that. And if you can show that you've studied a full bachelor's degree in English, we have sufficient proof to show that you can perform academically in English. So yes, if you have a statement from your university, if you can prove that you've studied everything in English for your bachelor's, then please submit that statement. I think, for example, in some countries, it's also mentioned on the transcript of records. That's also fine. If you can show on the transcript of records that you studied everything in English, if that's mentioned explicitly there, that's also fine. We just need to know, we just want that written out for us. So like, let's say a document that shows all the course names in English or something, that's not enough. We need it to be explicit. So we need to see a sentence somewhere that says this student studied everything in English. That can be on a transcript, that can be in a statement written by maybe a study advisor. But yes, we do need that information explicitly. Should we still include formalities in the motivation letter, or should we start immediately with the essay? I wouldn't spend a lot of time on formalities. I would start right away with writing the essay, because like I mentioned, you only have like 5,000 characters, which is not a lot of characters, and you need to spend as many of them effectively as possible. So you don't have to spend time with the formalities too much. We understand that you have a limited amount of space, and it's not expected of you to spend a lot of time writing, let's say, you don't have to write up Dear Admissions Board of the Euroculture Consortium. It is my pleasure to write to you today, but you don't have to go into that direction too much. You can just start by writing from your perspective, from your personal experience. Yes, because you only have so much space and you need to use it effectively. So that's a good question, by the way. Thanks for clarifying, for giving me the chance to clarify that. Yeah. Mia Juliana asks, my bachelor thesis is not in English. However, I have papers related to this program written fully in English and presented at an international conference. Which one do you recommend me to submit? So for the writing sample, an English language document is by far the most preferred option. So if you have a document that was published at an international conference, that is definitely something you would want to submit, because it's very good proof of your writing skills and of your academic skills even. So if you have like a published paper even, that's great. Yeah, absolutely do submit that. If you want to submit multiple documents, you can just you can put the different PDFs after each other in one document, so you can paste them together into one document. That's also fine if you want to show us multiple things. Just keep in mind that there's a size limit on the document, so I want to say if it's more than 25 MBs or something, it will not be processed, so try to keep the size of the documents a bit limited. Yeah, I think that answers the question, I hope. So let's see. I think I've caught up with every question we had so far. Thank you guys for all these great questions, by the way. It's really, really useful to have the chance to clarify a few of these things here. If you have anything else you want to, ask, feel free. In the meantime, maybe what I can do now, as we're waiting for maybe some new questions, is tell a little bit more about my own experience in the research track in Groningen in particular. So as a Euroculture student, I started where I am right now in the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, because I did my bachelor's here. So for me, it was kind of an easy transition to a master's program here. And maybe should I go into what motivated me to join Euroculture? No, I don't think that's super relevant right now. If you want to know my life story, feel free to ask. But I spent my first semester at the University of Groningen here. I spent my second semester at the University of Göttingen in Germany. And for my research track in the third semester, I decided to go back to the University of Groningen. So I came back here after spending my second semester in Germany. And what I did here, I was working with an international relations professor on the topic of differentiated integration in the European Union. So what that means is basically looking at networks and organizations of people that act together at different levels of governance. So, for example, because what you often find is that politics at the national level is in a kind of gridlock, right? Not a lot of things are happening at national level a lot of the time. So it's just like trade disputes and maybe some threats here and there, but there's not a lot of policy all the time. While that actually isn't very true if you look at levels below the national level. So maybe what is happening in border regions, what is happening in different cities, across how is, for example, how is the city of Prague connected to the city of Amsterdam? How's the city of, Berlin connected to Copenhagen? There's all these different kinds of questions that you can ask. Well, even though not much is happening at like national politics or international politics, what you find is that at lower levels, there's actually a lot of interesting integration that's happening. And that's what differentiated integration means. It's integration of Europe at different speeds, at different levels. That's kind of a complicated question as well. So maybe what I had to do for my internship was create kind of a map or create an overview of where this differentiated integration is happening. Because right now, there's actually not a single resource that we have that gives a good overview of everything that's happening in Europe in terms of integration at different levels. So we don't know, or we don't have a very clear picture of for example, how different cities in Europe interact with each other outside of their national governments, or how different regions have certain, defensive pacts, or maybe like development goals that they share with each other, that they cooperate with each other, And the goal of my internship was to help create a map of those kinds of things. So all these kinds of different networks of cities, regions, all these kinds of cooperations, all these projects that they would partake in across the border. That's really what the goal of my internship was, to help create a good map of that. And we learned some very interesting things about where a lot of cooperation is happening in Europe. I'd have to look up the results of everything I did at the time. But it was actually the results of what I created was actually used in a later publication by that professor. So at the end of the day, my name is now mentioned in some research project as a result of the work I did. So I was very happy to hear that. So what we found is that there's actually a lot of things that happen at the city level, whereas at the regional level, you might find some other topics that are more interesting or relevant. So, for example, there's a lot of regional development in Central Europe when it comes to like forest protection, whereas you wouldn't see so much of that if you look at between the border between the Netherlands and Germany. So it's more so about identifying regional interests and seeing where cooperation between different regions across borders is relevant and useful. So yeah, that was really the goal of the research I did there. And I would say that was a very interesting experience for me. It was quite far away from my own personal background, since I was more of a cultural studies student before. So to really dive into these kinds of international relations and governance topics was a really great opportunity. And maybe that also goes back to some other questions people had, like, because I didn't do much with this in my master's thesis. It was more of just an interest that I had, that I chased after, and that's what I did. That's also fine. You don't have to connect everything to like your final mission statement or something. It's fine to explore a bit and try to find out different things that might interest you, go in new directions. That's just as possible as sticking to your plan when you study Euroculture. Right. So I think that was quite a long explanation. I see there's a few more questions now. Vincent asks, I'm interested in pursuing a career in academia. In my case, is the research track always the better option, or is there a reason to consider the professional track as well? that's a personal question to some extent, right? Because I would say that the research track would be the obvious choice. And depending on your research, the non-European research track or the European research track might be more interesting. But I would say that in your case, the research track is the better choice because as an academic, if you are interested in academia, you need output, right? You need to show that you have already produced some things by the time you're going for your PhD. So after your master's is complete. So in your case, what I would definitely recommend is the academic track because it allows you to get output out there. It allows you to produce something academically that you can use after your studies to put on your CV and bolster a potential PhD application. So in your case, I would say definitely go for the academic track. But if you're not so sure about maybe going into academia, it's also fine to take your third semester and do a professional internship because all experience can be seen as relevant for one thing or another. So maybe there's some research institute that lies outside one of our European universities that you can work with for a semester. That's possible. In that case, you might, like, even though you're interested in research, you're not doing it with one of our European universities. And as a result, you're technically not doing the European research track. You're actually following an internship with a research institute. That's possible if you find something that's relevant or useful to you. So the obvious choice is the research track, but it doesn't need to be that way. It's also fine to maybe go in a different direction and maybe go find a professional internship with some researcher advocacy group that might also help you with your PhD application as well. Is it compulsory that one must have international job experience outside one's home country before she will be considered? No, it's not compulsory. However, it's a bonus. So if you have job experience outside Europe, that's gonna help your application. We do consider that to be a good thing. So yes, if you have experience working in an international environment, if you have experience working in a foreign country, those experiences are considered a benefit to your overall application, but it's not mandatory. So just in my own case, I applied for Euroculture without having any international job experience or study experience. I spent my full bachelor's in the Netherlands and then continued to apply to Euroculture, and I was admitted. So that's not a problem. Yeah, I think that answers the question pretty well. Okay. Does inability to speak a European language affect one's admissions? No, we only track your English language abilities. So if you're very good at English, it doesn't matter if you're not good at other European languages. In my case, I only speak Dutch, English, a bit of German, and a bit of French. So, it's not like you need to speak every language in Europe in order to apply. The program is fully taught in English, so that is what we assess you on. We don't assess you on your competencies of other European languages. However, what I should note is that knowing other European languages is once again considered to be a boon for your application, much in the same way that it is useful to have international work experience. So what I would say is it's not compulsory, but if you have that experience, it is valuable and it is useful to maybe write that up in your CV or your motivation letter, depending on where you can fit it in best, to mention that because it is considered relevant to us. If you know a lot of European languages, that shows that you have a keen interest in Europe and it's in the people, the cultures. And for a program like Euroculture, that is valuable knowledge to have. It says something about your profile, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary. I don't speak the language of every European country where Euroculture operates, and that's not necessary. Do we still need to submit the summary of the academic paper if it's written in English? I'm asking as my introduction in the paper exceeds the limit in the application, so I would have to shorten it. let's see. I think I would just have to look this up for a second here under the requirements. Because this is always something that I start questioning myself. Let's see. If you can give me one moment to double check this. Right. So yeah, this is just to clarify. If you wrote a thesis that is not in English, the summary needs to be available in English. But if you don't, if the document was written in English, then the summary is not necessary. I'm just double checking to see if I'm not saying anything that's wrong here, because this criterion is always the one I forget about. No, I would say if you wrote your thesis in English, then you don't need to submit a separate summary of the document. We can see what we need to see. But if your thesis was written in another language than English, please submit a summary. Yeah. Thank you so much. This webinar has been very helpful. Thank you, Vincent. You're very welcome. I indeed hope it managed to help you so far. Let's see. Are there any other questions that you might be having right now? When it comes to your application, maybe you want to know a bit more about the program itself. Because if not, I think we're already 1 hour and 45 minutes in, which is a good amount of time. Otherwise, I think we could start thinking about closing off the session. So I'm just going to give you, I see there's a few more questions. Okay. Can the mobility be in 2 universities and not 3? Yes. So basically, because in my case, for example, I only studied in 2 universities. I studied with the University of Groningen and the University of Göttingen. Because for your 3rd semester, you can choose to go back to a university you've been to previously. So I spent 3 of my 4 semesters in the same place. I spent 3 of my 4 semesters in Groningen and only 1 semester in Germany in Göttingen. So that's possible. You only at minimum need to be in 2 different universities. At maximum, you'll be spending your Euroculture studies in 3 different universities. So the mobility element from the 2nd to the 1st semester is completely mandatory. So you have to make that mobility move during from the 1st to the 2nd semester. That always has to be a different place from the one that you were during your 1st semester. However, after that point, it's fine to go back to universities you've been to previously. In fact, for the 4th semester, you have to go back to a university you've been to previously, which is why I'm saying you can only attend 3 different universities as opposed to 4. Because in the 4th semester, you always come back to a place you've already been. So because Euroculture offers a joint degree, which means that you get a diploma from 2 universities. So that's slightly different from a double degree, because a double degree would mean, for example, getting 2 diplomas from maybe 1 or 2 universities. But a joint degree is 1 diploma that is issued by 2 different universities. So, and of course, your 1st and 2nd semester universities decide which university you're going to get your diploma from. And this can also sometimes impact, have practical consequences for what you want to do after Euroculture. So, for example, let me let me see, how can I say this the best. So for example, if you I think I've heard this at some point, if you want to work in France, you sometimes need to have a diploma issued by a French university to work with certain institutions. Well, if you go to Strasbourg for your first or second semester, your diploma will be issued by those universities, right? So you will get a diploma from the University of Strasbourg. However, if you don't go to Strasbourg for your first or second semester, you will get a diploma from two different universities. And as a result, you will not get a diploma from France. And this might have some small practical consequences for maybe working in France. That's something you have to consider yourself carefully. If you're maybe interested in having a career in Europe after your studies, there are some small practical things to keep in mind there. Of course, what we should note is that you will receive a European diploma supplement, so you will be eligible to work. Your diploma will be internationally recognized, regardless of where you go, right? Your diploma will be internationally recognized as being of master quality. I think, yeah, it should be worldwide. I don't think a single country that I know of doesn't accept our master's diplomas as valid. But what I would say is that there are some minor practical things and procedures you can skip. For example, in certain diploma verification methods don't need to be taken into account if you have a diploma from a specific country. So, for example, if you get your diploma issued from Groningen, that means you don't have to have your diploma verified by the Dutch, let's say, education accreditation organizations. So that's just some minor practical things, not very consequential, but that's just something that you might want to keep in mind. So yeah, that's the long answer. So yes, you can have up to 3 different universities in Euroculture and a minimum of 2. My referees chose to send the recommendation letters directly to the Euroculture email. Will I, the applicant, be informed when the letters are received? Generally, we do not do this. We send a confirmation receipt to the person that sent the letter. So if you want to know if your letter has been sent and received, ask the referee themselves. We honestly don't have the time because, for example, sometimes a referee won't mention the name of the student in the reference email, and that means we would have to spend time looking up every individual applicant and see, well, was the letter received, yes or no? So if you want to know if your letter has been sent and received, ask the referee. We will always, if a letter was received in good order by us, we will send a confirmation receipt to the sending academic or referee in this case, and you can ask with them if the letter was sent and received. But yes, it's fine to submit them by email. The reference letters, we accept those without any issue. Final question from Vincent. Do we need to attach certificates, proof of employment with our CV? No, that's not necessary. If you have them handy, sure, but it's not necessary. What sometimes, maybe just a little thing, if you have like links to the websites of the organizations you work for and you put them in your CV, that's kind of useful because we generally like to check whether these organizations exist, and maybe we're just interested in learning more about the place you were in the past. So if you have a link to the website of the organization you work for, that just saves us some time, and that's much appreciated. But you don't need to show us the proof. However, because what you sign, like one of the questions during the application is we ask you to sign more or less or state that you will present your full academic background and professional background in honesty. So if we later find out that that is not the case, if you lie to us about something, We will figure that out sooner or later, and that will, of course, have consequences for whether you will continue to receive your scholarship or whether you are eligible to receive the scholarship. So we reckon also the same applies for things like your residence or your previous experiences in Europe. Yeah, we ask, of course, you have to also sign later down the application procedures. You have to sign a declaration on honor saying that you have not lied about specific things in your application. And if we find out that there are inconsistencies there, that will have consequences, of course. But we are generally fairly trusting of the applicants, so we will not ask for proof in advance a lot of the time, but we will have to verify some things. So it's in your own interest not to, misrepresent your own academic or personal background. Kingsley Opara, the webinar was rich and you touched every aspect of the Q&A session. Kudos. Well, thank you so much. I hope it was useful to you. And I also hope that your application will be successful, and I hope to hear from you as a student of Euroculture soon. So thank you. One more question from Ishna Armalia Arsad. I'm sorry about how I pronounce your name. I'm very Dutch when it comes to this. Is Erasmus still available for the next year's program? You're a fifth semester international relations student, sorry. However, I've been interested regarding the European perspective. Yes, so our project, our Erasmus Plus funding has been extended until 2026. So this means that we still have Erasmus Mundus scholarships available until that time. So we're very happy to be able to say that, because there's not too many programs that get, because this is actually the fourth time that Euroculture has received funding from the European Commission to continue our project with Erasmus Mundus scholarships. So we're actually very happy to tell you that, yes, we will also have them available next year and the year after. Yeah. So yes, absolutely. You will, if you don't manage to make your application this year, we will still have them available next year and probably the year after that as well. After that, we'll probably have to apply again for further funding. But at this point, yes, you can expect that we have Erasmus Mundus scholarships available for the next few years. Yeah. Let's see. We are getting close to the end of the webinar. So while I wait for any possible final questions in chat, I wanted to thank you all so much for your attendance and your questions. I'm really glad that we got enough of your input to finish out the full session. So I'm very glad that you guys all managed to come and have a chat with me today. That's very nice. It's always nice to see that interest for Euroculture is still alive and doing well. So that's great to hear. I want to thank you all very much for your attendance, and I also wish you all very good luck in finalizing your applications if you're planning to do so for this year. We're of course awaiting them with great interest. We're looking very forward to review everything you've submitted to us. Maybe in terms of the timeline, generally, or if you submit by January 15, we expect to have the results available in early March. So we have to take some time to go through this bit by bit, and hopefully by March we'll be able to tell you the result. Let's see. For now, we will not have any more webinars before the January 15th deadline in 2022, so next year. This means that if you have any future questions about Euroculture, know that you can reach out to Euroculture at RUG. Euroculture, let's see, at rug.nl. This is my email address. You can reach out to me there at any time during the week. I will try to be as responsive as possible with all your questions. Usually I should be able to respond in a day or two maximum. So don't hesitate. If you have any questions, I will always try to direct you to the relevant coordinators, persons that might be able to help you further. Let's see. Let me just pull up the email address of our if you have one moment, I will prepare and send you the email address of our student ambassador. So if you want to know about the current student perspective of Euroculture, I will send you the email address of our student ambassador, Margriet Visser. Let's see. Here we go. So this is the email address of our student ambassador. If you have any questions from the student's perspective, if you want to know more about what it's like to study Euroculture right now, maybe, for example, unfortunately, we didn't have time to get in touch or talk about this, is how Euroculture might work under COVID. Maybe I can just assure you now, Euroculture continues to run under COVID. We continue to run with online or hybrid methods throughout the pandemic. Because we're small scale classes, we are usually able to sneak under the radar sometimes and keep running a bit longer than some other programs who are bigger and require bigger rooms. So even when it comes to COVID, we have managed to find a good solution to most of the problems that arise from it. So that's maybe something to maybe ask Margriet more about if you're curious. Of course, you can also ask me. I'm very happy to hear from you that this session was useful to you. Of course, as with the previous webinars, I will be posting the video, the VOD, online later. If you want to maybe review a particular aspect, if you want to hear the answer to your question, feel free to review that at any time. All right, then. I wish you all a great day, night, evening, morning, depending on where you are right now. I hope to hear from you again in the future, and I wish you all the best. Of course, happy holidays and a good new year to all of you as well. Goodbye. Thank you all so much.